Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk on a Tuesday afternoon in the capital city of Kansas. A beautiful day outside. Great to be with you for the next 2 hours and change here on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. I myself am going to be with you a lot longer than that. We have got our first Tuesday night hoops doubleheader of the season, high school basketball action from the capital city coming your way tonight here on the Sports Voice of Kansas as the Seaman Vikings and Lady Vikes open their home schedule after playing their season opener last Friday night. Seaman at home against Lansing in United Kansas Conference action, and yours truly on the broadcast tonight. Having to go it solo. Larry Latimer is otherwise occupied tonight, so a rare solo high school broadcast for yours truly, and I will sound roughly 98% less intelligent without the coach by my side, but Larry Latimer's got another commitment that he's made, a class reunion event, I believe is what he told me, so that's where Lad is tonight, and so it'll just be me on the call of some high school hoops. And with I almost said first pitch. I've been talking baseball with some people. I guess I got baseball in the brain. Tip-off tonight is set for 5:45, which means we'll be done here on 580 Sports Talk at around 5:30 or so. And Spencer Dupuis, who will join me in a bit. I'm Dan Lucero, by the way. Spencer Dupuis will have the show until about 5:30, at which point he will hand it back to me. So, we got 2.5 hours of sports talk. Then we got some high school basketball. We are jam-packed on this Tuesday show here on 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and, of course, on our video stream. We are live in living color. I'm the only one you're looking at. I'm having a wretched hair day. It's a long story. Please don't make too much fun of me if you're watching on the live stream right now. But we are available on video. You can watch us live on our YouTube channel. 580 Sports Talk is the name of that channel. If you watch us, we appreciate it. If you've never watched us before, you should give it a shot. See how you like watching the program on YouTube or on Facebook at WIBW News. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Again, the name of that channel is 580 Sports Talk. 2.5 hours of sports talk coming your way today. And again, I am Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis will be along in a little bit. And like I said, a half hour shorter means we got more to cram into this 2.5 hours. We're going to start the show today by talking about the biggest problem with the Chiefs offense that no one is talking about. At least, to my knowledge, no one is talking about it. I'm going to talk about it. And then maybe afterwards you will hear what I have to say and think, wow, Dan is right. And this is the first time for everything, right? Wow, Dan is right. This is a big problem. And then you will take it to your next water cooler or bar stool discussion about the Chiefs with your friends or enemies. And perhaps you will sound much smarter in the process. But this is the thing. We have been rending garments about the offensive line all season long. The Chiefs have a bigger problem with their passing game right now, and a reason why it has felt like less than the sum of its parts now going on about the last month. And it's not just Wanye Morris. It was convenient to have a scapegoat. Wanye Morris was certainly an obvious scapegoat to have, but there's a bigger problem, and in fact, it doesn't have anything to do with the offensive line at all. I'll get to that here in a little bit. Also going to talk some college basketball on the program today. The number one player in America for the recruiting class of 2025, A.J. Dybansa, announced his commitment earlier today. Kansas State was interested and had him in for a visit. KU was one of his final four schools, but everybody who knew anything was consistent for the last 3-4 months saying that A.J. Dybansa was going to BYU because BYU was going to write him the biggest check. And that is what has happened. Dybansa committed to BYU live on ESPN's First Take earlier today. And depending on which reports you read, the NIL compensation for Dybansa for what will surely be just one season in Provo is in the neighborhood of $5 to $7 million. And if you have a problem with that, you should write a bigger check. That is what I have to say about that. We'll get into a little bit more of the reaction to Dybansa's signing today. And speaking of KU basketball, we'll talk about that and a lot of KU football news over the last 4 or 5 days with Michael Swain of Fog.net, our Jayhawks insider. Michael Swain from the 24/7 Sports Network will join us at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly. And we will get his thoughts on KU's 2-game losing streak on the hardwood, what they need to change moving forward, how they can get their ballyhooed transfer class a little bit more comfortable a little sooner, and also all of the happenings with the football staff. They made another hire to the football staff today. We'll tell you who that is. And also, one of the funnier social media transfer portal announcements that I've ever seen. You may be familiar with the name Gage Keys if you are a Kansas football fan. Defensive tackle, played quite a bit for the Jayhawks in 2023, and then went portaling after the season, ended up at Auburn and played at Auburn at 2024. Well, in 2025, he's going to be a Kansas Jayhawk again. He went right back into the portal, and he's coming back to Lawrence, and what he said on his social media was really funny. So we will get to that a little bit later on the show, talk all things Jayhawks with Michael Swain. And the larger thing I want to get at with college basketball today, we'll start the 4 o'clock hour with this discussion. I floated it, a bit of a trial balloon yesterday when we were talking about the result of the border war, Missouri beating Kansas in basketball, and the SEC just fairly dominated their matchup with the ACC, the SEC-ACC Challenge on the hardwood. And so it begs the question, has the SEC surpassed the Big 12 in men's basketball? We have said it so often, so many times, we've come to accept it as a fact, and the numbers have always borne it out, that the Big 12 is the best men's basketball league in the country. And on paper, if anything, the league got better with the addition of Arizona and didn't lose much with the loss of Texas and Oklahoma, who've never been basketball-first schools, even though they've had, at varying times, some success on the hardwood. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Texas went to an Elite Eight 2 years ago, and it wasn't that long ago Oklahoma was in a Final Four, the Buddy Hield years. So, like, those schools could be good at basketball, but it's hard to argue that those are huge losses compared to, those weren't upper crust Big 12 basketball programs. That being said, the 2 best teams in the country and 5 of the top 9 in the country in KenPom are in the SEC. So I'm asking the question, and we'll dig into the numbers of it a little bit and get your thoughts on it. But has the SEC surpassed the Big 12? So we'll talk about that later on in the show. Plus, all the things you've come to know and love from an episode of 580 Sports Talk on a Tuesday. We'll do Random Question Tuesday. I'm going to throw it out to you folks, and am curious your answers to the question. If you're in the YouTube live chat, about which more in a second, we'll get that question to you so you can participate, play along. Also, we've got What Is Wrong With You, 2 new stories today on What Is Wrong With You. 580 Sports Talk headlines to wrap up the show before we send it out to coverage of high school basketball tonight. You are, as always, invited and encouraged to participate in the program. Right now, the best way to do that is on our live YouTube stream. Go on ahead, fire it up at work. It's late in the day. You're probably just, running out the clock on your work day, right? Maybe not, but maybe you are. And if you are, click over to youtube.com, find the stream, 580 Sports Talk. We got a live chat function. You can watch along, interact with us, interact with your fellow listeners. I see the usual suspects. I see JB, and Trevor, and the Marks, Mark B and Mark H. And I know we'll see some others as we go along today in the YouTube live chat. Appreciate you being along with us. You can also leave a comment if you're watching on Facebook, which you're more than welcome to do as well. The Facebook page is 580 Sports Talk. Jeffrey's in the live chat, too. He wanted me to point that out. So there you go. More jumping into the pool as we go along here on this Tuesday show. All right. The biggest problem with the Chiefs that no one is talking about. Chiefs gave up 3 sacks and 15, I think it was, according to ESPN's numbers, 15 quarterback hits on Sunday night. And there's no way around that being a cause for alarm. You do not want your quarterback to take that many hits, particularly when your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. Not ideal. Not a good performance for the offensive line. All of those things are true. As Matt Verderame, our NFL insider, pointed out on Sunday's show, some of those hits were because the Chargers were rushing 5-6 defenders on a lot of snaps. They blitzed more than the average Chiefs opponent. The Chiefs don't get blitzed a lot because the word is out over the years that blitzing Patrick Mahomes is a good way to get yourself beat. And, I mean, lo and behold, eventually that's what ended up happening to the Chargers, right? Like, they blitzed Patrick Mahomes a bunch and they lost the game. So blitzing is not like the secret to success. In fact, it's usually quite the opposite when it comes to being a defense that plays against the Chiefs. So the Chargers blitz at an abnormal rate for a Chiefs opponent. And when you blitz, you hit the quarterback. So that's part of the reason that quarterback hit number was so high. And then you dig deeper into the stats from Sunday night. 3 sacks allowed by the Chiefs, all in the first half. 11 of the 15 quarterback hits in the first half. So things got better as the game went along. DJ Humphries, notably, got better as the game went along. And hopefully he's out there for Sunday. Again, we're not going to know no participation reports until tomorrow, of course. So we won't know the results of that MRI for DJ Humphries. And hopefully he's going to be ready to play on Sunday. Chiefs could use him against Myles Garrett and the Browns, certainly. But putting it all on the offensive line after Sunday night isn't quite right. And then you look even further. 3 sacks, and I said this on yesterday's show, 3 sacks on Sunday night. 2 of those were coverage sacks. 2 of those were not Mahomes drops back and there's somebody in his lap. Mahomes drops back and they just get beat by a 7-man pressure and the play is dead immediately. Or Mahomes drops back and the left tackle gets cooked and there's no chance to get a pass off. That was one of the 3 sacks, but the 2 other sacks were coverage sacks, which means nobody's open. How do you get open in the NFL? You probably have never had to try to get yourself open against coverage by a National Football League defense. I've certainly never had that opportunity myself, but there's a term that is a fairly simple one that we use to describe how a receiver or pass catcher gets open. It's called separation. Separating from your defender. Finding the hole in zone coverage if you happen to be playing against zone. Separation is how you get open. How many separators do the Chiefs have in their pass catching group right now? I'll give you a second to answer that question in your head. Go through them in your head and names you might throw out. Well, Xavier Worthy, 4.2 speed. That's a separator. Travis Kelce, Hall of Fame tight end. DeAndre Hopkins, Hall of Fame wide receiver. Those guys are separators. Guys, the Chiefs don't have any separators. The answer is 0. They don't. They don't have anybody who separates. They don't have anybody who gets open. They got 2 guys on their roster that can separate. One of them is Rashee Rice, and he's hurt. And the other is Hollywood Brown, and he's hurt. Other than that, Chiefs don't have any separators. And here's the thing. The names you're throwing out, the names you're thinking of in your head, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins. Here's the problem with those guys as it pertains to separation. Number one, Xavier Worthy weighs like 25 pounds. Xavier Worthy is a rail. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't scenarios, route concepts where Worthy is capable of separating. Think about that 3rd down conversion from the 3rd quarter Sunday night against the Chargers. Is that drag route, that crossing route, mesh, whatever the concept is, whatever name you want to use for it, but a long drag route over the middle of the field. Xavier Worthy can get separation on that. Step for step, he's going to outrun just about every defensive back, and certainly if you end up with a safety or a linebacker on him, he's going to outrun that guy too. Here's the thing. 1, you have to scheme that up specifically, and 2, you have to make sure it's a free release and a certain type of route, because if he doesn't get a free release, he's getting knocked off his route because, again, he's a rail. Now, he's a rookie. He's got time to get stronger. He's got time to get physically tougher and develop as a player. But right now, this version of Xavier Worthy, it's not a separator, not a consistent separator anyway. You see the plays on which he can be, but those plays take a long time to develop. And sometimes they take too long to develop. And when a play takes too long to develop, Patrick Mahomes ends up on his back. What about the other guys? DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce. They've been some of the great separators of their era. They truly have. I think they're both going to Canton. Kelce, obviously, that's not even worth a debate. He's going to sail in on the first ballot. And I, for one, can't wait for his Hall of Fame speech. I think that is going to be a hoot and a half. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, has a Hall of Fame resume, too. I really do. Now, wide receivers, there's a little bit more backup when it comes to like the field of wide receivers who should get into Canton, and that maybe means that Hopkins has to wait a while, but I think he's had a Hall of Fame-worthy career. But if you've watched those two guys this year, you've noticed something about them. It's glaringly obvious about Travis Kelce. It's a little less obvious about DeAndre Hopkins, but it's still there. These guys are slow, man. They're slow. Travis Kelce is so slow. I think it was Mike Freeman on Twitter who said during Sunday night's game that it looks like Travis Kelce right now runs about a 6'2" 40. He is so slow. And you can tell, too, that he is slow because the yards after the catch for Travis Kelce, it doesn't happen anymore. There aren't those mazy runs through the open field, getting an angle on a linebacker or a safety. He can't do it anymore. He's not fast enough. He's 35 years old and he's played a ton of football. The legs go eventually. They go for everybody. They are gone for Travis Kelce. And what that means, if he's even half a step slower, getting to the spot in the zone, getting to the place where only he knows to be and only Patrick Mahomes knows that he will be, that half second is the difference sometimes between a successful passing play and Patrick Mahomes eating turf. DeAndre Hopkins is faster than Travis Kelce, but he is also not as fast as he used to be and not quite as able to separate as he used to be. So are they capable of it on a snap-by-snap basis of still finding that green space or beating coverage of a linebacker or a safety, or in Hopkins' case, even some good corners one-on-one? They can do it. They just don't do it as consistently as they did when they are at their best. And the Chiefs have always had, with Patrick Mahomes, always had someone who could separate and get open on every play. When you have multiple guys who can do that, like the first Super Bowl champion team, when you had Kelce and you had Tyreek Hill, and when he was on the field, Sammy Watkins was a separator, then you can score a ton of points because you're never off schedule because somebody is open every time you drop back to throw the ball. And too often, Patrick Mahomes is dropping back to throw and people aren't getting open. Now, I think it's unfair to certain guys on the depth chart to expect them to be separators. Not everybody is a consistent route winner. If they were, like if Justin Watson or Juju Smith-Schuster or Noah Gray was a consistent one-on-one route winner, they'd be a hell of a lot richer. Because there just aren't that many guys who win every route, right? Like those are the guys that go to Canton. That was prime DeAndre Hopkins. That was prime Travis Kelce. That may someday be Xavier Worthy. But right now, the passing offense for the Chiefs feels like less than the sum of its parts. And it's opened up Patrick Mahomes to take more hits because they don't get consistent separation in the passing game. This is not a medium that allows me to put up a bunch of like video on this. Like the people that grind the tape and do, screenshots of plays or run video, run the all 22. Like those folks will be able to show you what I'm telling you. And what I'm telling you right now is it's not that this is a group of bums at wide receiver. It's not. Like I said, there's one guy who's absolutely going to the Hall of Fame and another guy who maybe ought to. There is a young wide receiver with a lot of potential who is one of the fastest guys in the NFL. But right this second, at the points in their careers where DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy have intersected, with Rashee Rice sidelined, because that's not just a separator, that's a yards after the catch, explosive play guy. The Chiefs have dearly missed that. Hollywood Brown was another guy who was going to bring that element to this year's team, and we saw him for one freaking preseason snap. What a cheat that is. What a shame that is. Hopefully he'll be back before the end of the regular season. Sounds like it's still trending in that direction. But right now, as it stands, the collection of players the Chiefs have, this is actually a less bad problem to have than the problem that last year's wide receiver core had, which was they couldn't catch the football. Like, I will take these guys don't get open often enough over these guys can't catch a cold. By the way, slightly related, we were going to save it for 5A Sports Talk headlines, but Kadarius Toney got cut by the Browns today. In case you missed that, he dropped a punt in his Browns debut on Sunday, and that was it for Chiefs Super Bowl hero Kadarius Toney as a Brown. I didn't know he'd been activated to the active roster. I was watching that game. I had it on in the background. They were playing the Steelers on Sunday, and when Jim Nantz said the name Kadarius Toney, I did a literal spit take. I was eating an apple, and a piece of apple flew out of my mouth. I could not believe Kadarius Toney was back in the NFL. Not for long, as it turned out, because he stinks. Anyway, I've done it. I fully turned on Kadarius Toney. I was the last Kadarius Toney believer. He burned me one too many times. This is a better problem to have because there are still plays where you see the flashes. The third down that won the game effectively was a vintage Travis Kelce play where he found the space and he waited and he made the catch to keep the sticks moving. He can still do that. DeAndre Hopkins can still beat somebody on an out route, can still make a back shoulder catch, can still win a contested ball. Frankly, I think one of the things Patrick Mahomes needs to be doing is knowing where those two guys are going to be on each play. And as the pocket breaks down, just saying, hey, look, either Hopkins gets this or nobody does. Or either Kelce makes this catch or it hits the turf or it goes into the first row. Because those are going to give you better chances. Those contested balls, I would rather throw those. And maybe that's something that Mahomes has been encouraged not to do. Or maybe that's something that Mahomes himself has decided, hey, I was throwing way too many picks early this season. I'd rather just eat the sack and bring Matt Araiza on to pin the other team than throw it to the other team. That could be part of what's happening here, too, with the rise in sack numbers for Mahomes. But it's just an inability across this roster right now to know that someone is going to get open. And it never happens for a team 100% of the time. But when it happens a lot of the time, you know what it looks like? You do know what it looks like because you've seen it. Because you saw it, the Super Bowl 54 champions. You saw it for the team that went to Super Bowl 55. You saw it the year after that. With multiple separators on the roster. And you saw what Patrick Mahomes' numbers looked like then. And right now, they don't have the guys that are getting open consistently enough. It's still there. It's just not there often enough. And that is why this offense feels a little bit stuck in mud sometimes. Because when it does click, when guys are getting open, when it's as simple for Mahomes as getting back in the pocket and ripping it to an open receiver, whether that's 6 yards down the field or 1 yard down the field or 15 yards down the field, the Chiefs look like as well-oiled a machine as you could ask for. That touchdown drive to end the half against the Chargers, mitigating circumstances there. It was a 2-minute drill. You just don't see NFL teams go 2-minute drill for full games. This isn't the old Pac-12, right? So mitigating circumstances, yes, but you saw on that drive what it can look like. And you think, well, why doesn't it look like that all the time? Well, that's why it doesn't look like that all the time. Because DeAndre Hopkins doesn't get open as often as he used to. And Travis Kelce is slower than molasses at this stage of his career. And they can still be effective players. And this offense can still move the ball. And they can still score enough points to win football games. But the frustration with the passing offense right now, I think, has less to do with the play of the offensive line and more to do with too many plays where Mahomes is being hung out to dry because nobody's getting open down the field. And those sacks, particularly against the Chargers, those were killers. I think every drive on which the Chiefs did not score in the first half of that game, there was a third down play where Mahomes got sacked or got hit as he threw. And again, some of that, like, you have to give the defense their credit. You have to tip your cap to them a little bit, but that's the biggest thing to me. I mean, we made Wanye Morris into the scapegoat. We've cussed and discussed the offensive line over and over and over again. But for me, right now, the reason the Chiefs don't click like it feels like they ought to click on offense with the talent, with the names on paper, is they just don't get enough consistent separation. So that's my thought. Would love to hear yours. Jump into the YouTube live chat, 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. Would love to hear your thoughts. Also, we got a Random Question Tuesday coming up. I'm going to drop it in the live chat here in just a little bit for you to weigh in on. But first, when we come back, AJ Dybansa got a bag. Don't hate the player, hate the game. We're just getting started on this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk.
Choose more time and more hair. Try Hair Grow today to feel and look your best. Available online at Amazon, Walmart.com, and NewYorkUSA.com, or in stores at your local CVS. Look younger and feel more confident with Hair Grow by New Nordic at NewNordicUSA.com, or in stores at your local CVS.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medication. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
This message comes from Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort. Journey through the heart of Europe on an elegant Viking.
.335 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero, Spencer Dupuis joining you this afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski remains on paternity leave. In case you missed that, happy news earlier this week. Brendan and his wife welcoming their first child last weekend. So Brendan, wife and baby, resting comfortably at home. Talked to him earlier today. So he is remaining on paternity leave. So we've got a two-man weave for you here this afternoon. Going to get into the random question here in just a little bit. The random question today: what trade, signing, commitment to your favorite pro or college team made you the most excited? Want to hear the answer to that on the on your YouTube live chat. You can also hit us on the text line 785-272-9429. Had a couple people asking whether Brendan and his wife had a boy or a girl. That is not for me to share. That is any further details I'm going to leave to him to share if he prefers. But it is a healthy baby is what I can confirm for you. Anyway, real quick one to get to this. AJ Dybanza, number one college basketball player or high school basketball player in the country for the class of 2025. Had a lot of suitors in his recruitment, including Kansas State and Kansas. Took a visit to both schools. Kansas was in his Final Four as he prepared to make his announcement today on ESPN's First Take. But if you were paying any kind of attention, there was no drama to this. It was always BYU. And the reason it was always BYU is because BYU is writing a mammoth name, image, and likeness check.
They got treasure troves over there.
To AJ Dybanza. Reports that the NIL compensation for Dybanza is in the $5 to $7 million range. Essentially, think of it as like a one-year free agent contract for Dybanza to go and play his college basketball in Provo. Ryan Smith is the guy bankrolling all of this, by the way. He is? Yes, it's Ryan Smith.
He's the owner of the
Jazz and the Utah Hockey Club? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's him. Yeah.
Interesting. No, I did not know that.
100%. It's him. It's why Kevin Young's the head coach and got paid. Ryan Smith is the sugar daddy. That is where the money is coming from.
I did not know that.
For BYU. Yeah. There's something kind of funny about the thought that Ryan Smith owns the Utah Hockey Club and the Utah Jazz and is making his money from Utahns, many of whom are not BYU fans, are perhaps Utah Utes fans.
Yeah.
And taking that money and turning around and dropping bags for BYU.
Which is crazy how he's able to drop that much money. Like, I get you're an owner of multiple sports teams, but he's dropping so much money just to make that arena be a hockey arena for now. And they're getting a whole nother arena. They're redoing the arena. How do you have that much money?
Invent something.
Also,
be a tech bro.
Also, this guy's getting $5 to $7 million, essentially.
Yes,
allegedly.
Yes, that's what I said. Yeah.
To maybe play 1 or 2 years at BYU.
One. There's no maybe two. It's one. There's
way more money in NIL and college basketball than football, I feel like.
That seems right for now.
Yeah.
And we're not maybe getting as many details about the football NIL compensation publicly as we are the basketball compensation. And some of that is due to proximity, right? Like both Kansas and Kansas State have decided they're going to be major players in the NIL space when it comes to basketball. So like, for example, we know roughly how much Coleman Hawkins got to come and play at Kansas State. So maybe we're a little bit more aware for that reason, but certainly it does seem like we are more aware generally of the dollar figures for basketball players than we are for football players right now. Anyway, it's always a cause for consternation. You hear about an 18-year-old kid being promised all this money before he ever gets onto a college campus, and it makes it feel like something has changed. The tectonic plates of college sports have shifted. This isn't what happened to the game I love, all of that stuff. My advice to you, if you are rooting for a program that did not get AJ Dybanza and wished you could have gotten AJ Dybanza, is to say your school should have written a bigger check. AJ Dybanza, by all accounts, is going to be one of the best players in college basketball next year. Might be a better prospect in some ways than Cooper Flagg, who's the big deal prospect this year that ended up at Duke. Probably going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft after his 1 year in college. Again, it is not always that people are willing to say that about a high school senior, that, oh yeah, they're going to do their 1 year of college and they're going to be the number one pick. Like Cooper Flagg was that guy. Zion Williamson was that guy. You don't have that guy in every class. A.J. Dybance is that guy in 2025. And I don't know if he's going to be the kind of player that's worth $5 to $7 million. All I know is somebody thinks he is. And that's why he's going to that somebody's school. And that's the going rate for a player like that. And if you're not willing, or your boosters or your NIL collectives aren't willing to write that kind of check, player. And if you don't get the player, don't hate the player. Hate the game. Get your weight up, not your hate up. Write the check. Cut the check. Whether they're worth it or not is immaterial. Somebody thinks they are. That's the way the game has always been played. It's just now we can put a dollar figure on it because it's legal. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Random Question Tuesday. Which signing, trade, or commitment to your favorite pro or college team made you the most excited as a fan? Thinking about the Juan Soto signing and the baseball hot stove earlier this week, and National Signing Day, of course, got me thinking about that question. So I want to hear from you. Jump into the YouTube live chat, answer the question. Spencer and I will give our answers as well. That's coming up. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk. Random Question Tuesday time here on 580 Sports Talk. Got some good answers coming in the YouTube live chat. We'll get to those. Spencer, we'll ask you first. Which trade, signing, or commitment to your favorite pro or college team made you the most excited as a fan?
I've got two.
Okay.
They're kind of tied because they were the come up of these teams. Max Scherzer signing with the Nats, knowing you needed another ace, and you spent the bag to get the ace, and that deferred contract still paying him out that money no matter where he goes, where he decides to play.
Sure.
But Max Scherzer to the Nationals, and then the trade for TJ Oshie to the Capitals, and then him re-signing every year or every time he keeps re-signing. He's just like the American hero aspect from the Olympics.
Sure.
And knowing that he's such a great winger that he helped them get a cup.
Yeah. Okay. For me, so when I was a kid, my favorite hockey team, the Avalanche, used to make a big trade deadline deal every year. Every single year, they would make a splash at the trade deadline. Like their first year in existence was Patrick Waugh. They went out and they won the Stanley Cup that year. 1 year they traded for Theo Fleury. 1 year, gosh, they used to make a big deal every year. Ray Bourque was a huge one. That was one that I really remember. Ray Bourque. Rob Blake was another one. But the one I maybe remember the fondest, not the fondest, but the most vivid, like where I was, what I was doing, how I reacted to it, was when they signed both Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne on the same day before the 2004 season. And then those guys proceeded to look completely washed. Selanne wasn't. Kariya, unfortunately, was. Didn't really do anything. The Avalanche got eliminated second round that year. So that ended up being a bummer, but I remember those two guys signing. I was at a sports memorabilia store in the mall when that went down, and I high-fived the guy behind the counter. Like, yep, we're going to win the cup. Didn't happen that way. Also, Wade Davis signing with the Rockies. Wade Davis is one of my favorite Royals of all time. The Rockies were coming off a playoff berth in 2017 with Greg Holland as their closer. They did not re-sign Holland. Instead, they signed Davis, who was just coming off that 1 year with the Cubs after the Royals had traded for Jorge Soler. They gave him a 3-year deal. I was super psyched. I was a huge Wade Davis fan. I felt like that was going to solidify the ninth inning. And yeah, he's starting to show some wear, but even if he's only good for 2 of the 3 years of that contract, totally worth it. And then Wade set a saves record for the Rockies, and they went to the playoffs in 2018. Do not ask me about the 2019 Colorado Rockies. I don't have the emotional bandwidth to do that today or any day. And I certainly don't have the emotional bandwidth to describe what Wade Davis put me through in 2019, because he was done like dinner after 2018. But I still remember being really psyched that we'd signed the cyborg, Wade Davis. Answers in the YouTube live chat. You got a couple, Christopher and Vance, Joe Montana coming to the Chiefs. Legitimizing that position after a long time where it was not really legitimate. Chiefs went through a quarterback wilderness there, to say the least, in the 1980s. So, yeah, bringing on Joe Montana, and Montana still being able to play at a high level for the Chiefs in the late stages of his career. Paul in the YouTube live chat. Cueto and Zobrist coming to the Royals in 2015. After a lifetime of being sellers, the team was finally buyers. And they didn't just buy, they bought the guys. That's the thing about those trades. That one even feels better in retrospect, because you had one shot at it and you hit. Like Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star in Star Wars Episode 4. Like, one shot. Perfect. You have to brought in the right guys and made it shake for a championship. Jason, the YouTube comment, says Avery Johnson to K-State when it was official. Certainly a big one. Mark H. and Mark B. both shouting out Marcus Allen coming to the Chiefs. So he certainly had a lot of star power when he came over to Kansas City. Got some more here. JB says K-State getting Michael Beasley, defining at the time. K-State had been a doormat before that. That was I think the first time in my lifetime that I was like, and this is 2008, I want to say. What year was Beasley? It was when I was in college, or adjacent to my college years. Yeah, 2007, 2008. So that was the first time in my life where I realized I have to be aware of Kansas State basketball. Kansas State basketball, really? Like, knew all about football. Again, this is an outsider's perspective here, but That was the first time I was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, K-State plays hoops too. How about that?
Yeah.
So, that was a big deal one as well. Another one from Vance, Amos Otis being signed by the Royals. He remembers that from when he was a young guy. And Trevor saying the Royals signing Bobby Witt to the extension. I was so confident they were going to lose him to the Yankees or Dodgers. Still can't believe they got that one done. Cameron in the YouTube comments submits not a trade signing or commitment, but a hiring. Kansas State hiring Bill Snyder. Bottom feeder program on the verge of getting cut from the school. Snyder made them what they are today. Yeah, certainly a defining moment. No question about that. Great answers. Appreciate the dialogue. You got a quick random question, Spencer?
I do not.
Okay, then we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll wrap up this hour. 580 Sports Talk next. .354 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan and Spencer with you. In the course of our conversation about A.J. Dybance's commitment to BYU, the number one high school basketball recruit in the class of 2025, I don't know if you know this, Spencer, but A.J. Dybance, not a Mormon.
I was thinking he wasn't, but I do know he has been playing his prep ball in Salt Lake, right?
That might be right. I honestly, I think that might be correct, or something like that.
But yeah, that is crazy.
Anyhow, and in the context of talking, in the course of discussing that in the YouTube live chat, that was a question. Like, does he have to take a Mormon mission? And It's not so much a university requirement that BYU students take a Mormon mission. It's just like a religious thing that you decide you want to do. Like Jake Clifton, the former K-State linebacker, decided to take a mission and to go on mission. And that's just something that you can decide to do or not. Like if AJ Dibansa feels called by God to spend 2 years in like the former Yugoslavia, not a country anymore, hasn't been one for many years. He's going to go do 2 years and spread the gospel in Estonia. Good for him, but it's not certainly going to be a requirement. Like I don't think Jim McMahon ever went on a mission, right? Like so, it's not a requirement. And also, that gave me the chance. And for people who don't know, it's always a delight to inform them that BYU's current starting quarterback is one of like 4 Jewish students on campus. Jake Retzlaff. Did you see his new NIL deal?
No, I didn't.
He got an NIL deal from Manischewitz. They make the matzah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
crazy.
Isn't that great? Yeah, he's doing like TikToks and Manischewitz posted on their Instagram, Manischewitz and the BY Jew. We are proud to announce a collaboration that everybody saw coming, Jake Retzlaff and Manischewitz. Manischewitz, the world's most famous Jewish food brand, is thrilled to be sponsoring him on his journey. L'chaim to the BYU Cougars. I think I got that right. Please forgive me if I butchered the pronunciation of that particular Hebrew word. Anyway, always fun to do that. Appreciate those of you joining us on YouTube today. The live chat feature. Again, the channel is 580 Sports Talk. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of the show, what if the Big 12 isn't the best men's basketball league anymore? We'll discuss. Also, 2 new stories on what is wrong with you. And Spencer will talk to Michael Swain of Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network for Jayhawk Weekly. That's all coming up on hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Hour number 2 of 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. So good to be with you. Thanks for hanging out with us on 580 WIBW FM 104.9, online at 580WIBW.com, and on our live video stream. Check us out on YouTube. The channel is 580 Sports Talk. If you're not yet a subscriber to the YouTube page, why not? What's keeping you? Subscribe to the page. You can watch us live. You can watch our videos archived. You can always know when we're going on the air with an instant reaction video or some such. Be a subscriber to our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. You can also watch us on Facebook, WIBW News. Give you something else to look at on Facebook other than AI-generated slop or stuff you didn't ask for. Do you ever even see like posts from people you know on Facebook anymore? It's all just like ads and like stuff we think you'll like.
I did for the first time see a post from somebody that I grew up with the other day, and I was like, what? I haven't seen their post in a million years.
I know, right? It's always kind of jarring.
Like sometimes sometimes your algorithm will flip and you'll actually start seeing posts, and then like it'll flip again like in the next day or two.
So the algorithm has only ever been right that there are 3 things on Facebook that I want to see. Number 1, Snoopy. I want to see Snoopy. I like Snoopy. Old Charlie Brown Peanuts comics, pictures of Snoopy playing baseball or typing on his little typewriter. Yeah, sure. Snoopy. Yeah, absolutely. Big Snoopy guy. Number 2, rugs and carpet being deep cleaned.
I remember the first week I was here, and for those inside baseball here, we used to be cubicle mates.
Yes.
Before some things switched around this summer.
Yes, we all got our own offices.
Yes. So one time I looked, first week I was here, didn't know really Dan at all besides texting the little bit that we had.
Didn't know a thing about me.
And it was like the second day I look over, this dude's watching rug cleaning on Facebook.
Yeah, like Mountain something rug cleaning. I think they're out of like England or something. Man, they do a number on those rugs. Unbelievable how dirty those rugs are. And they get them clean. It's so satisfying. I told my wife about those videos, and it led to a conversation in which I informed her that there is a video game called Power Wash Simulator where you can power wash dirty things and make them clean. That's the extent of the video game. You just sit there and you've got like your power washing equipment and you power wash like an old van or like some old playground equipment or the side of a house, and you just make it clean, and that's the whole game, and it costs $25. And I think my wife thought that was the single stupidest thing she had ever heard in her whole entire life, which is saying something because she's married to me. So
my new algorithm on Facebook is seeing 2.5 Men videos in the reels.
Okay, see that?
I've never watched the full episode of 2.5 Men, and now I want to. Like the other
You're
night,
not missing much.
The other night I was just sitting there, and I was my girlfriend was watching TikTok, and I was watching on Reels, and she's like, "Are you watching 2.5 Men?" I was like, "This is just what Facebook Reels brought up for me."
The other good thing that Facebook has given me is old pictures of sports venues that no longer exist. Like there's full Facebook groups devoted to this. Kindly folks, probably in their 60s, 70s, maybe even 80s, saying, "Does anyone remember Sportsman's Park? That's where I saw my first baseball game. I saw the great Stan Musial hit a double." And it's like 3 pictures that you could they were probably the first 3 Google image search results for Sportsman's Park. And the person just made a Facebook post. You know what? I like those pictures. I like that. There's something very wholesome about seeing pictures of like the old St. Louis Checkerdome and people in the comments being like, "I saw my first heavy metal show there." Or, "Yeah, I remember the great Bob and Barclay Plager for the Blues," or whatever. Like, I do. I like old sports venues, especially not the ones that are in, smaller markets that were like minor league ballparks or minor league hockey arenas. Like, man, this used to be the place to be on Friday nights for, the Hanson brothers would come and slug it out here and the whole thing. So
I've got a new one here. I'm just on Facebook right now. Fire service photos, like fire trucks.
Fire trucks.
I have never once seen this on Facebook.
Sometimes
before.
I wonder how old the algorithm thinks I am.
Well, I guess the only time that I've ever interacted with a fire equipment vehicle thing, apparatus, I guess is what they're called, is where I went to college. Huntington has a Marshall themed fire truck that's at the closest campus station. So I've like shared that before. That's the only time I've ever shared any fire app, or I don't know why this is popping up.
Were you watching like Chicago Fire or Fire Country, and maybe Facebook heard you talking about it in the background, something like that?
Perhaps.
Because I know this. When my wife and I were expecting, we were going through the early stages of like learning about what parenting was going to be, and like doing Google searches for parenting advice, and like looking up things about like, okay, well, how are we going to feed our kid? Are we going to breastfeed? Are we going to do formula feed? Are we going to combo feed? And that was about the time Facebook decided I want to see breastfeeding videos on my YouTube. And man, that I don't block a lot of stuff. I had to block that stuff, man.
Yeah.
That's none of my business. I don't need to be seeing that. So anyway, if you want good things to come on your Facebook algorithm, watch our show on WIBW News on Facebook. Maybe that'll reset your algorithm a little bit. You'll get some good sports stuff on your Facebook wall. But anyway, however you are interacting with the show today, we appreciate you being here on the program. I'm going to duck out in about 20 minutes. I got to head up to Seaman High School for some high school basketball tonight. It's our first Tuesday night hoops doubleheader. We're a little limited on Tuesday nights. We can bring you high school basketball this season on account of the Kansas State men's and women's basketball schedule once we get in the Big 12 season. But we've got a Tuesday night tonight, a Tuesday night high school basketball doubleheader. Seaman hosting Lansing in the United Kansas Conference. It's the home opener for Seaman. They played at Piper on Friday night. Girls won a tight one. Boys lost to two really good Piper teams. Home opener for the defending 5A state girls basketball champions. So it'll be a fun night out at the Viking ship, if you were. Viking Gymnasium. At Seaman High School. I will be there. It'll be a solo mission tonight. Larry Latimer has another commitment tonight, so can't make it to do color with me tonight. So just me. It's a lot of me, but I hope you'll join me for a little high school basketball tonight here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. But we'll have the show until 5:30. Spencer's going to take over after What Is Wrong With You. He'll talk to Michael Swain of Fog.net. Gosh, Spencer, whatever will you talk about with Michael Swain? Only like everything, right?
Yeah, as Michael said earlier on Twitter, if you follow him at mswain247 on Twitter, he can't even leave his house right now. There's so much stuff going on.
He said he left the house twice today, and news broke while he was out of the house each time.
Yeah, so I think I've got a joke for him when he comes on the air.
All right, so yeah, looking forward to that conversation. Michael joins us every week for Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk. That's coming up. So is What Is Wrong With You. But I wanted to start with this. I floated this out yesterday, just kind of a thought balloon. Has the SEC surpassed the Big 12 in men's basketball? And I want you, before we get into the numbers of it, Spencer, I want your like gut reaction to that thought, that just thinking out loud, the SEC is surpassing the Big 12 in men's basketball. What is your gut reaction to that?
My gut reaction to that is not that I've thought it ever, but like in the last few years, just seeing how relevant like Alabama has gotten, and those SEC programs has kind of made me think, is there going to be a switch coming soon? Because they're already the biggest college football conference, and they have the most money coming to them, right? It's really the SEC and the Big Ten. Right, those are the two powers in football when it comes to the Power Four, the powerful-ist, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And I've been kind of having a hankering for it, but then Kansas kind of comes in. Then you see teams like BYU and coming into the conference, and I don't know. I'm tending to start to leaning towards what you're saying.
So, just basic stuff from Ken Palm. Just the basics. Based on what we've seen so far this season. So this is not a broad view. This is just basically what we've seen through the first. Most teams have played somewhere between 8 and 11 games in this season so far. And Ken Palm's rankings are generally considered the gold standard for advanced metric rankings of college basketball teams based on your offense and your defense, your tempo, and your strength of schedule. Right now, the SEC has the two best teams in the country in the Ken Pom. Auburn and Tennessee are 1-2. They have 5 of the top 9 teams in the country. Alabama, Florida, and Kentucky are 7, 8, and 9. In between those SEC teams, Duke is 3rd, Gonzaga 4th, Houston is 5th, despite having 3 losses. They played a murderous schedule. And Iowa State is 6th. So those are your highest-ranked Big 12 teams. But the SEC is dominating the top end right now of the Ken Pom. 5 of the top 9 teams in the country play in the SEC. 8 of the top 30 play in the SEC. Texas A&M is 24th. Mississippi State is 26th. Ole Miss is 27th. 10 of the top 40 teams in the country play in the SEC. Georgia is 35th. That's a bit of a surprise. Texas is 38th. 13 of the top 50 teams in America play in the SEC. Oklahoma is 43rd. They're undefeated. Arkansas is 45th. Mizzou is 49th. That leaves only 3 SEC teams outside the top 50 in the Ken Pom. LSU is 54th. Vanderbilt is 60th. South Carolina is 67th. Let's do the Big 12. Big 12, as I mentioned, they've got 2 teams in the top 10, Houston and Iowa State. Kansas is just outside the top 10. They are right now 11th in the Ken Pom. They're right between Marquette and UConn. Baylor and Cincinnati are 17 and 18. So the Big 12 and the SEC have the same number of teams in the top 20 in the country. Texas Tech is 25th. Arizona is 29th. So the SEC has 1 more team in the top 30. They have 3 more teams in the top 40 because after Arizona at 29, the next highest ranked Big 12 team in the Ken Pom is BYU at 47. And then you have Arizona State at 50. So 9 of the top 50 teams in the country play in the Big 12 compared to 13 for the SEC. About the bottom feeders from the Big 12, West Virginia is 56th, Utah is 64th, Kansas State is 71st, Colorado is 77th, UCF and Oklahoma State are 84 and 85. TCU, I knew it was going to be a down year for TCU. I didn't expect this. They are 91st in the Ken Pom rankings.
Yikes.
So, more top 10 teams, more top 50 teams, and as you would then expect, fewer teams outside of the top 50. The worst SEC team is better, higher ranked in the Ken Pom. Better being just subjective when it comes to these rankings. The worst SEC team is better than 5 Big 12 teams. So what that tells me right now is there's a little more quality at the top so far this year, and there's a little more depth to the SEC this season. So why would that be the case? Why are we talking now about the SEC horning in on what has long been the Big 12's turf? Because we have been saying consistently that the Big 12 is the best basketball league in the country for a lot of years now. A lot of years. The SEC's moving in on their turf. How are they doing that? Well, 2 things. Number 1, this is a conference with more money than it knows what to do with. And it seems as though they have made a very simple calculation on their end at schools like Alabama and schools like Tennessee and schools that are not what you would consider to be traditional basketball powers. They have decided, well, what if we just tried? It's the 2024 Royals attitude, right? What if we just tried?
Yeah.
What if we put a little bit more money into this? What if we went out and hired some big-time coaches? Alabama hires Nate Oates. Florida hires, maybe Todd Golden's not the best. Not Todd Golden. Maybe Florida's head coach is not the best example because he is currently under investigation for being a creep. It is Todd Golden. My mistake. He's facing some pretty gnarly sexual harassment allegations presently. So maybe not the best idea, but example, but good coach. You know who else is a good coach? Chris Beard, head coach at Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Bad guy.
Yeah.
Good coach. Chris Jans, Mississippi State. Again, is he the greatest guy in the world? We have some evidence from his time at Wichita State that maybe not. But can he coach? You bet he can. These are the coaches, and again, like Chris Beard and Chris Jans in Mississippi and Mississippi State. When have they ever been really good at basketball consistently? Mississippi State's been one Final Four in my lifetime. 1996. That's one more Final Four than Ole Miss has been to in my lifetime. And now those programs have decided we want to be good. We want to be good so bad, in fact, that we'll hire these guys who maybe are unsavory characters, but we know they can coach their tails off.
Why in their NIL huge? Because they're a SEC school.
Yeah, it may as well be, right? Like, you've got all of this money, and it can't all go to football.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I know firsthand. So there was a player at Marshall who was tops in the country in shooting percentage, and I think he was up there in 3-point percentage the last couple of years. Well, Marshall doesn't have very much NIL. They're a group of they're mid-major, naturally don't have enough. Mississippi State came calling and gave him a brand new, fully loaded pickup truck for like $100,000.
Sounds about right.
And that was something Marshall couldn't do.
Yeah.
On top of whatever else they gave him.
And it's not just like the coach at LSU, who, again, I'm blanking on his name, Matt McMahon. Matt McMahon's a good coach. Like, LSU's been down in basketball for a little bit. Like, you saw what they did at K-State. Like, they're going to up their recruiting. They're going to up their resources, and they're going to get to a point where they're competitive. Oklahoma and Texas, like, they're the show in their states. They're going to be competitive in basketball. So that's the big thing, is the financial commitment from the SEC. And then the other factor in this is the factor that is the main reason that the SEC has been better at football for all these years, has been the best football conference for all these years. It's where the athletes are. Bottom line, you want to win games, you got to get players. Where are the players? Where are the players? Where are the athletes? They are in the American Southeast. They're not all there, but per capita, the ball players are in the American Southeast. And now Texas is an even bigger player in that conference than it used to be, which means you're going to have more of that particular recruiting turf. Now, I think you could argue right now at this moment that high school recruiting is maybe a little bit less important than the transfer portal, because of how many players the last couple of years have had long college careers and taken their COVID years, their bonus years, redshirt years, whatever you want to call them. But it's where the players are. Like, just geographically, demographically speaking, the players are in the American Southeast. And as basketball grows in popularity, it's not just a sport where the players are all in like California and New York. The players are not just all in the upper Midwest. More and more, there are more great players coming out of the American Southeast, and the SEC schools dominate their recruiting turf. Like, an SEC school in any sport can come into Kansas and get a player. Right? Like, and we got examples for this in every sport. Baseball, Tennessee's cleanup hitter in the College World Series, Dylan Dreiling Hayes, Kansas. They've got a commitment from the best pitcher in the state of Kansas in softball, Hardenberger, the girl from Wamego. She's going to Tennessee. The kid going to, Mizzou obviously can recruit the Kansas area pretty well because of proximity, but there are all kinds of stories about any sport we're talking here. You can come from the SEC and go anywhere you want to get a player. How often do you hear about a Big 12 school going down to like Georgia or Louisiana and getting a high school kid? How often does that happen? And how often are those players like the creme de la creme players? The best of the best in those areas stay home.
Yeah.
And that's always been the case in football. And now we're seeing it become more and more the case in basketball. So when you add all that up, the players are there, the coaches are there, the lack of scruples on the part of the people hiring the coaches are there, the financial commitment is there. It would not surprise me if this early season trend becomes a longer lasting trend and we start to see the SEC rival or eventually surpass the Big 12 in basketball supremacy. Now, Mark B points this out in the YouTube live chat, because a lot of how we talk about which basketball league is the best is based on how they do in March, right? And this past March wasn't a great March for the Big 12. And Mark makes the point, and he's right. I think Big 12 men's basketball cannibalizes itself every year, beating up on each other. He goes on to add that the non-conference losses in the league this year are starting to look troubling. But, yeah, it is a problem for perception of the Big 12 that their programs seem to not make deep NCAA tournament runs. At least that's been the case. Last year it was the case. And look, that's the kind of thing I think we overrate that when it comes to how we evaluate programs. I think that we overstate that sometimes, because the tournament can be so random and just come down to matchups. Like a healthy KU had a Final Four caliber team last year. They weren't healthy. A healthy Houston had a Final Four caliber team. They lost Jamal Shead in the Duke game. Like, to some extent, what can you do? But I also do think that there's something to the idea, and I think we're going to see even more in a 20-game league schedule, that Big 12 teams are going to beat the crap out of each other from January through March. And how much steam do you have when the tournament arrives? I'm going to be really interested to see how the league fares in the NCAA tournament this year, because I think that will be really telling about the state of the Big 12. We're going to take a quick break here on 580 Sports Talk. Maybe we'll get Michael Swain's thoughts on that larger topic. We got a lot to pick Michael Swain's brain on here on Jayhawk Weekly. But first, what is wrong with you next on 580 Sports Talk? It's What Is Wrong With You time on 580 Sports Talk. 2 new stories today going up against our Monday winner, who the more I think about it has a really strong chance to be a December winner. Going to take a good story to knock off. The woman with the golden gun, the American woman who was traveling to Australia to go to clown school and Googled whether or not she could take a gun on an airplane and then set a calendar reminder on her phone to put her gun in her suitcase. You can't do that. And she was arrested. And also, yes, the gun was made of 24 karat gold, $3,000 gun. She was arrested. She is going to do a year in prison in Australia.
While I don't have a gun story or a golden gun story today, I might be able to get right up there.
Okay, let's see. What you got?
A Florida man is facing the music after admitting concealing a number of firearms in record players and mailing them to addresses in the Toronto, Canada area last summer. According to court documents obtained by the Star, an investigation was launched by U.S. authorities after 3 record players containing a total of 5 firearms and 9 magazines were intercepted by agents of the Canadian border in the summer of 2023. The investigation carried out as part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Project Safe Neighborhoods resulted in the arrest of an Orlando resident, Johan Castillo, in February. He was 23, charged with 1 count of smuggling goods of the U.S. On October 24th, he pled guilty in a Florida district court. According to the plea agreement in the spring of 2023, he agreed to ship the firearms and magazines to a friend in Canada in exchange for payment. Then he allegedly purchased 3 firearms from pawn shops and stores in Florida and arranged for a friend, another Florida resident, to purchase 2 additional pistols. The first 2 record players were mailed from the USPS office in Florida on June 10th, 2023 to 2 addresses in Ontario. Authorities seized 3 firearms and 4 magazine rounds concealed amongst 2 record players. About 2 weeks later, he mailed a 3rd record player containing 2 additional firearms and 3 magazines from another Florida USPS location. The contents of that package were also discovered and seized at the Canadian border. As part of the plea agreement, Castillo admitted that at the time he mailed the packages, he was aware of the firearms concealed inside and their intended export to Canada. When reached for further details, the Canadian Border Service Agency told the Star the shipments were intended for addresses in Ajax and New York region. It remains unclear if any Canadian citizens are facing charges in connection to the shipments. Castillo, faces a maximum penalty of 10 years jail time. Sentencing date has not yet been set.
So inside the record players, put the guns.
Yes.
I mean, I guess that's clever. Like, I don't know. I'm not as intimately familiar with record players to know like what's inside them or anything like that. But I would imagine like you could probably get from like put them in the back of your car, get from one house to another without that being detected. But like they scan stuff when you send it from country to country, man.
Yeah.
Like, when you're sending it to a different country, you got to know.
It's just like you're going country to country.
Yeah.
Like
guns in the record players. That's a new one on me. All right, for my story today, I got to be real with you folks. This whole story, it's a real story, but it's also just one penis joke. We got the Iowa City Police charging a University of Iowa student they say had a pole in his pants at the time of his arrest. Officers report seeing 19-year-old Cole Swanson of Barrington, Illinois. Congratulations to him. He was using a trash can to support himself outside the Summit on South Clinton Street in Iowa City just before 1 a.m. Friday morning. Police say Swanson had a pole sticking out of his pants. That's not where it goes. That appeared to come from a moped or a construction site. Swanson reportedly showed signs of intoxication, was in possession of a fake ID, and had a BAC of .207.
oh.
He's now charged with public intox and possession of a fake ID. If convicted on both counts, he faces a maximum of 13 months in jail. What he has, though, now, whether he gets jail time or not, is a headline that he can use as a pickup line. Yeah. Cop said I had a pole in my pants. Want to see it?
Jesus Christ.
I told
Supported by a trash can.
Yeah, you needed a trash can to support myself. on account of the pole in my pants, you see. They said I had a pole in my pants. Yeah, can I get that in writing? Might want to frame that citation. Anyway, who wins today?
I don't know. I mean, this is such a serious versus unserious crimes here.
I don't think either of these beats the woman with the golden gun.
Oh, no.
I will say that. I think the woman with the golden gun, the woman going to brought her gun to Australian clown college. See, that's how you know it's good. I'm still laughing about it a day later. That man had a pole in his pants. Boy, I'll bet. Anyway, we'll give that the nod for today, but the one with the gold gun moves on. We got Jayhawk Weekly coming up next. I'm out of here for high school basketball. Jayhawk Weekly with Michael Swain next on 580 Sports Talk.
Welcome back, 580 Sports Talk. Spencer Dupuy with you. Now we're joined on the phone by Michael Swain of Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. And Michael, hopefully no stories break while we're on the phone for this interview because it seems like you've had a busy day today.
I have, and knowing my luck the last couple of days, 4 things will break in the 15 minutes we're talking. But no, it's a busy time, and this is what college football is now. December is the busiest month of the year. It's crazy.
All right. Well, we'll first start with some hoops before we get into football. A lot to break down there. A lot of news coming out there. But not a great showing the last two times out for the Jayhawks. Probably maybe their worst half of basketball the other day. What's your takeaways from the last two games?
Yeah, I think every time in a season you start to see teams, figure out the way KU is playing. And I think you saw it last year where the Missouri game and a little bit of the UConn game were kind of times when you felt like, okay, yeah, KU won, but the other team did some stuff that is, I wouldn't say like super concerning, but you're like, okay, that's something KU's gonna have to deal with. And I think the issue right now for KU is the fact that you look at the Creighton game, you didn't have Rylan Griffin, and Creighton made KU turn into a jump shooting team. And when you don't have Rylan Griffin, who is one of your best shooters, that's not ideal. And KU didn't deal with that really well and didn't really perform at a high level on either end of the floor. And then you look at the pregame, and it's somewhat similar in that, Missouri had a good game plan in that they really cranked up the pressure, came out with a lot of intensity, and tried to make KU an execution team where you have to make the right pass, the right time, and the right moment to get Hunter Dickinson the ball in the post, to get a guy an open shot. And KU was just so lackadaisical, and it was so shocking to see from a team playing in a rivalry game. So I think you look at the two games and say there were different reasons why KU lost, but at the same time, you can kind of look at it and say some of the cracks are starting to show in terms of what teams are going to do to Kansas this year, where if you are a home team and you got a decent home crowd against KU, you're going to try and crank up the pressure. And if you are a team that, let's say, has a good center and can protect the paint, hey, sag off KU a little bit, make them knock down jump shots. And I think when KU's playing, Hunter Dickinson, DeJuan Harris, and KJ Adams, a combined 100+ minutes a game, like it's going to be really, really hard to consistently break down teams because you're playing with two non-shooters. So KU, I think, is going to have to find some stuff, and I think it just comes down to personnel, right? Can AJ Storr and Rylan Griffin be guys that can play more than 20 minutes a game or 25 minutes a game? If so, then I think some of these problems will work themselves out because you're not going to play KJ Adams 35 minutes, and DeJuan Harris is not going to play 37 minutes. I think those are some of the ways you can kind of correct some of the issues I think you saw in the last week.
You mentioned Storr and Griffin. Why haven't they really found their fit yet in this team?
Well, you're talking about two guys who are playing very different schemes before, right? Rylan in Alabama, he's able to just kind of go do what he wants. That's how Nate Oates coaches, right? It's very much free form. You're kind of just playing hoops, and that's not how you play at Kansas. And I think you can see sometimes defensively that, he can kind of get lost, and offensively his shot selection can leave something to be desired. And so that has led for his minutes to be short sometimes when Bill Self is not wanting to see some of those mistakes. And I think for AJ Storr, it comes back to the stuff that Bill Self's been talking about for months now, where can you do something else than just be a scorer? And I think the issue right now is that AJ really isn't even being a scorer. He's really settling a lot. He's not getting to the rim. He's not using his athleticism. And I think that comes down to confidence. And AJ does not look like a confident basketball player right now. And I think that's what this NC State game and even the Brown game, right? Those are the last two non-con games before KU starts conference play. So those will be some big games for, I think, some of these guys to get their confidence back, or maybe they go into conference play humming a little bit more. And I think that's going to be huge, huge, huge for AJ Storr in particular.
Broader Big 12 question here. We discussed this in the first segment of this hour. Has the SEC surpassed the Big 12? I mean, you look at the Ken Palm rankings right now, they have 5 of the top 9 teams. And we used to say it's always the Big 12 in college hoops. Do you think that maybe those tides are turning?
I think the SEC has always been up there with the Big 12, and year in and year out. Like, I think you would say, hey, if you're going to take the next 5 years, which conference would you bet on? I would bet on the Big 12 for sure. I think this year, look at the teams, right? Auburn's played pretty well. Kentucky's had their ups and downs, but I think they've been generally pretty good. And I think the SEC is a good basketball conference, and you take in the fact that, they've added Texas now. But I think it's something too where the non-conference schedule has kind of changed things a little bit sometimes with the way teams like Iowa State schedule. And it is interesting that I think at times maybe that can impact some of the stuff. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season. But I think, look, the SEC is a very good conference. Is it going to consistently be the Big 12 year in and year out? I don't know. But I think it's one of those things where this year in particular, man, yeah, it is a really strong conference.
Let's transition now to football. Obviously, a lot has gone on over the weekend, a lot of news you were breaking. But let's first start with a guy that's coming back in Jalen Daniels. He's returning. You know what went into his decision, and was there ever a chance he'd go anywhere outside of KU?
Well, yeah, look, yeah, this day and age, there's always a chance, right? Look, I think for him, there's a couple things. I think the chance to be a legacy player is something that is pretty important here. Obviously, we've talked plenty about the senior class that just left, but Jalen has a chance to be a one-team guy, and at quarterback, that's kind of rare these days. I saw a really good stat that I think about 40 to 50% of the FBS teams out there had a starting quarterback who was a transfer, and I think that's only going to get worse as time goes on. So I think for Jalen, it's a chance to be a legacy player at Kansas, right? Go down, I haven't looked at the passing year totals, but I don't think he's going to pass Todd Reesing, but he can cement himself as the number 2 quarterback in KU history in terms of the record books. Like, that's pretty dang good. And so the chance to also play in the stadium helped break that in. So I think a lot of those things go into account. And look, KU came with a good offer, right? That's what a lot of this comes down to as well. You have to have a good offer to keep your really good players. And so KU came correct, had a good offer. And I think everything kind of aligned there where everyone's on the same page. And that's why Jalen Daniels is back.
And Daniels will be communicating with a new guy this year as a co-offensive coordinator because Jeff Grimes leaves for another position. Did KU put up a fight to keep Grimes, or was that kind of a mutual decision for the departure?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer that. So I don't think people at KU lost a lot of sleep at it. I'll say that.
And Zim Zabrowski, obviously, he's going to have a little bit maybe of a new role, but then you hire today the hiring of Lubick from another team in the conference, or excuse me, Nevada. They hired him from Nevada. Yeah. How are their two roles going to coincide like we saw before with Jeff Grimes?
Well, my understanding is that Jim Zabrowski will be the offensive coordinator. So I believe he will be the one that calls the plays. Now, as you saw this past year, like, Zabrowski was the co-offensive coordinator for Grimes. And what does that mean? Look, I think it's a lot more of just title and overall responsibility than it is like something that impacts things on game day. I would expect that someone like Matt Lubick would then go up into the booth and as tight ends coach, work up in the booth, help offering a different set of eyes, because for Zabrowski and Jalen Daniels, they have worked really well when Zabrowski's been on the field, and when Zabrowski was in the booth, Jalen Daniels, I think, threw 6 interceptions in 3 games, and so I think that's a relationship that really does work well together when they are able to communicate face to face and talk on the sidelines. So as for the whole dynamic, I do expect Zabrowski to be the one that is calling the plays, and that's just based on the title. And so I think we'll get a much better picture of what Lance Leipold is expecting out of these guys when we get the chance to talk to him, most likely later this month, maybe into the new year.
Switching sides of the ball, Brian Borland decides to retire, as he's kind of been Leipold's DC throughout Leipold's head coaching experience, whether it be here in Buffalo or at Wisconsin Whitewater, and getting the full-time promotion to defensive coordinators, DK McDonald. How big of a role is that for DK to fill? And I remember talking to you sometime last offseason, and he was a very intriguing hire at the time.
Yeah. So this is something that, Brian Borland and Lance Leipold have a great relationship. Like, I don't think this is something where he brought it up this weekend that, hey, Lance, I'm retiring. No, it's something that's been talked about a lot. And I think the way it plays out is very clear that Leipold believed DK McDonald was the right guy for the job, and he's the one that gets it. So he's going to bring different levels of experience, right? He's worked in the NFL. He was on the Iowa State staff when they invented the 3-3-5. So, he's got an experience. The question really is going to be, he's a first-time play caller. How is that going to play out? I don't know. And I think that's kind of the issue with the hire like this. Like, on offense, I can kind of tell you what to expect from Jim Zabrowski and Matt Lubick, right? Because we've kind of seen it. I don't know what to expect from DK McDonald. I think KU's going to stay in the four-man front. I don't expect any major changes like that, but is he going to be a front foot defensive coordinator? Or is he going to be someone that's playing more man or more zone? Like, a lot of this stuff we're really not going to know until the season starts and you're able to really get a full season and see what he wants to do. So it's not sexy to say I don't know after a hire, but look, I really don't know how this is going to play out. I think it's one of those where there's some elements I like, there are elements I don't like, and I think it's all going to have to play out, and you have to see how it works. So I think next fall for DK McDonald and the defense, it's really going to be interesting because you're expecting with a new defensive coordinator things potentially to get better, and if they don't, then there are probably some bigger questions that have to be asked.
A big player on defense that announced he's going to the portal is DJ Warner. Was that unexpected?
I don't know, like probably 50-50. The coaches are around the guys all the time. So you look at the snap counts right at the end of the year, things kind of tailed off. His recruiter that got him to Kansas isn't at Kansas anymore. Like, there are a lot of factors that go into these decisions. And for KU, it is not ideal because you're losing a player who does have long-term potential. I am probably of the opinion that a redshirt season next year probably would have been the best decision for him and his long-term potential. Is that something he wants? I doubt it. And so if he's going to go transfer somewhere else and go play, I think, right now I think he's got an offer from SMU and Mizzou. I don't think he fits in the SEC. I think, SMU would be the right fit, but it's a situation where for KU, it's not ideal because you're losing a talented young player. But it's not one of these where I'm looking and saying, man, he showed you a lot during his freshman year, playing 200 snaps, only getting 2 tackles. You'd love to see some flashes, right? Some memories over the course of the year. You're like, oh man, Warner really made this play right here. And so you didn't see a lot of that. And so that for me has me thinking just, man, I'm really interested to see how his career plays out, because if he is able to get stronger and get bigger and get kind of in that 235, 240 range instead of the 225, 220-ish range, I think he's got all the talent in the world, but that's going to come down to him and the work he puts into the weight room.
Last one here, another name that popped into the portal, a guy that kind of seemed like maybe he would be the second running back next year after Devin Neal leaves, and Savion Morrison, me. He leaves. Was that at all shocking, or with the running back coming in the transfer class, did that kind of seem like it was going to happen?
Well, I don't think people maybe expected him to jump in so far as that you wait for Devin Neal to go, and then when it's your chance to be at the top of the rotation competing, you leap. But I think on the same token, you can look at it and say, well, you added LaShawn Williams. KU's looking at some other running backs in the portal. You add those 2 guys, and then you talk about Sevion, for example, and Daniel Highshaw still hasn't entered the portal as we end Tuesday. So there are some things that are up in the air here that you could say if you're Sevion Morrison, you got 1 year left. What do you want to do? You want to go play. So go find a spot where they're going to say, hey, man, we like your talent. We like what you can do. Come in. Come be a guy that gets, over 200 carries in a season and just go out playing a lot of college football. And so I don't think you can blame guys that to make those types of decisions. And that's my understanding of what this was. Is that it's more of a making the choice to go somewhere where you're kind of guaranteed to play, and not necessarily where you have a bad fall camp and all of a sudden you're in the same position where your last year of college eligibility is getting, 30 carries over the course of the season.
Michael Swain, our guest, Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. Thanks for the time, Michael. We'll talk next week.
Awesome. Sounds great. Talk to you next week.
That was Michael Swain, Fog.net and 24/7 Sports. We'll wrap up this hour coming up after this break. Welcome back, 580 Sports Talk here on 580 WIBW. Spencer Dupuis with you here. Final hour, or final cut short hour coming up here very soon. We'll have headlines, big breaking news story out of the MLB as another player has signed, this time with the Yankees, a big lefty contract. That's coming up. Final hour of 580 Sports Talk on 580 WIBW. Final hour, or I guess final 23, 24 minutes here on 580 Sports Talk before we send things out to Seaman High School. Dan Lucero will be on the call for 580 Preps basketball action. One of very few Tuesdays you'll hear 580 Preps on the air due to Kansas State basketball coming down the line and when it comes to conference play. But we got a lot to get you here in this final 30, 25 or so minutes on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Spencer Dupuy with you, youngest in command, movement for the final 30 minutes. We've got some breaking news out of the MLB. Juan Soto signed that $65 million deal the other day. Well, the team that missed out on him, the Yankees, have agreed to a deal with Max Fried, 8-year, $218 million contract. They said, we can't get a bat, so let's shore up the pitching. That would be the first or the largest contract ever for a lefty. That's big contract news there for the Yankees. They missed out on a hitter in Juan Soto, but said, let's shore up our rotation with a lefty in Max Fried. It's a big contract for the Yankees to give out. Obviously, they weren't going to give out. They're not giving out a triple that contract or a 2.5 times that. So they're going to get Max Fried. Big addition for them. Obviously, you think back in October, Max Fried at Game 6 of the 2021 World Series. He pitched 6 shutout innings against the Astros to help the Braves clinch their first championship since '95. So, big news just coming out here a little while ago. Also, while we're on the topic of the MLB, the draft lottery just happened down in Texas at the winter meetings, and my beloved Washington Nationals land the number 1 pick in the MLB draft for this next year, while the Mariners make a huge leap to take number 3. I'll get you the top 18 selections here. Let's see. Obviously, picking first is the Nationals, then the Angels at second, the Mariners at 4, the Rockies at 5, Cardinals at 6, Pirates at 7, Marlins at 8, Blue Jays at 9, or excuse me, I read that wrong. Angels at 2, Mariners at 3, Rockies at 4, Cardinals at 5, 6 is the Pirates, 7 is the Marlins, 8 is the Blue Jays, 9 is the Reds, White Sox at 10, Athletics at 11, Rangers at 12, Giants at 13th, 14th is the Rays, 15th the Red Sox, 16th Twins, 17th Cubs, and the 18th is the Diamondbacks. We also have more breaking news here in the MLB. The Blue Jays are finalizing a trade for 3-time Gold Glove winning second baseman Andrés Giménez from the Guardians. So get him out of the division, right? So that's big news popping off down the MLB wire as we speak. How about some local Tide news here? No, that's the same one. I thought another MLB trade came through, but those are going to happen here at the winter meetings. But former Kansas City Chief, most hated Kansas City Chief, Kadarius Toney has been waived by the Browns after a disastrous game where he dropped a punt the other day and against the Steelers. So the old friend alert, he's available again. I don't think there'll be a reunion with the Chiefs as they cut him loose while he was on a contract. So obviously he's now back on the free agent market. Speaking of the Chiefs, they are losing an assistant defensive line coach, as Nebraska is set to hire Chiefs assistant defensive line coach Terry Braden as the school's new defensive line coach. He's been with the Chiefs for 8 seasons in the last 4 as the assistant defensive line coach. He's also a former head high school football coach in Florida and worked in 2014 at Florida Atlantic University. He's also a former Howard quarterback. In Terry Braden, he's the new defensive line coach at Nebraska after being the Chiefs' assistant defensive line coach for many years. Now let's get into college hoops. The Ichabod's hold steady at number 3 in the latest NABC Top 25 poll. For the third straight week, the Washburn Ichabod's men's basketball teams remain number 3 in the latest NABC Division II coaches poll released on Tuesday. The Ichabod's wrapped up last week with a pair of MIAA road wins at Nebraska Kearney and Fort Hays State. They're 9-0 and 2-0 in the MIAA. They'll have 7 days off as they will face St. Edwards and Texas Perriman Basin in the following day at the River City Classic in San Antonio. Washburn will wrap up the fall slate, returning to MIAA play at Central Missouri on December 21st. We'll give you the, top 10 there in that poll. Nova, Southeastern, and Florida has 15 first place votes, all 15, might I add. Then West Texas A&M at 2, Washburn at 3, West Liberty, West Virginia at 4, Ferris State at 5, MSU Moorhead, Minnesota, that's at 6, Damon, New York at 7. They also got one first place vote, at 8, Fairmont State in West Virginia, at 9, North Georgia, and at 10, Colorado School of Mines. Sticking with college hoops, we got another college hoop headline here that regards to a local player. Kansas women's basketball forward Reagan Williams has been named Big 12 Freshman of the Week announced by the conference office on Monday. The KC Mo native recorded her first collegiate double-double in Kansas's 70-60 victory over Wichita State last Thursday. She's had a career high of 13 points and 11 rebounds. She's the first Jayhawk to post a double-double this season. She added 1 steal and a block in 31 minutes of playing time in that game. So far this season, she's averaging 6.2 points and a team-leading 5.7 rebounds per game. She started all 9 games so far this season. She's leading the team in field goal percentage as she's gone 23 of 48 from the field. She's also leading the team with 5 blocks this season. Williams and the 8-1 Jayhawks are back in action tomorrow. They're hosting Kansas City at 6 p.m. at Allen Fieldhouse. You can tune into that one on ESPN+. And I mentioned it to you earlier while we were on with Michael Swain, fogged on that in 24/7 Sports. But headline here, Kansas has hired Matt Lubbock to be their new co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach and work alongside Jim Zabrowski, who spent last year as the co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. The duo is replacing Jeff Grimes, who left that coordinator position for the same job at Wisconsin. Obviously, we mentioned that in the last one, but that's still big news there. How about another headline for you? Number 1 basketball recruit, we mentioned this earlier in the show, AJ Dibansa. He picks BYU and an NIL package worth reportedly between $5 and $7 million, depending on which report you read. Depending on which report you read is right. But $5 to $7 million for a year, maybe if they're lucky, 2 of action, which will want more in the NIL after that. For the number 1 basketball recruit, AJ Dibansa, who had Kansas State and Kansas in. He had taken official visits to both places, and then Kansas was in his Final Four, but ultimately picks BYU. I believe he was playing his prep basketball in Salt Lake City. Let me double check on that while we do have some time here. He currently attends Utah Prep in Hurricane Utah. Prior to that, he was at Prolific Prep. Prolific Prep in Napa, California, and he was at St. Sebastian's in Needham, Massachusetts. So he is going to BYU, and he'll be in the Big 12, and he'll constantly be He'll constantly be compared to going up against these Kansas State teams. So we'll see him in action in Big 12 play. Also, Kansas baseball gets the number 1 JUCO class in the nation for the 3rd consecutive year when it comes to recruiting at the JUCO level. It's pretty big. Obviously, with the way that college athletics is working these days, that having a JUCO kind of pipeline, I guess now you'd call it, they got a pipeline to the JUCO ranks. It's pretty big, pretty big for KU baseball. Let's see what else we have here on this headline segment. The SEC has fined Mizzou $250,000 for storming the court in the game on Sunday where they knocked off Kansas. Are we surprised? No, they're going to get to fine. They were also fined $100,000 in 2023 when fans rushed the field following a game-winning 61-yard field goal over as time expired over then number 15 Kansas State. So people of Kansas know all well about the Mizzou court and field storming, but they are being fined $250,000 by the Southeastern Conference for doing so, which that was a decisive win. So I guess it was a big win because it was the number one team. But they weren't truly the number one team because Creighton had knocked them off the other day, right? So while they were listed on the last AP Top 25 poll, are they truly the number one team at that point? I wouldn't say they would be, but technically bias the numbers, they are. Let's get to one more headline here, and I believe this has become official since we threw it on here. Mountain West is adding UC Davis as a non-football member in 2026, sources told Brett McMurphy at the Action Network. UC Davis will give Mountain West 10 basketball members in 26 and 8 football members, which was first reported by Ross Dellinger. I believe it is now final. It is now officially, they are officially in the league. There are 2 college head coaching positions that everyone's kind of looking at right now. One in the Big 12, that is West Virginia. Rich Rod being rumored. Rich Rodriguez, the former coach for West Virginia back in the day, back in 05-06 time. He's rumored to be going back there. No official word on that yet, but all the groups that I'm seeing, it does kind of appear that he will be the next head coach. Also, there was some reporting earlier today that UNC is, in fact, working on a contract for Bill Belichick. I don't know how much to put into that based upon who was reporting it, but that was something that came across the timeline today. Kind of interesting. I don't know why you want him to be like, I just don't know the lure of Bill. Just stay in media, Bill Belichick. Come on. Like, be retired. I get that you like it. I get that you like coaching football, but like, come on, just stay in the media. That is my 2 cents on that. Let's see if there's any late breaking stuff coming here before we hit the break. I don't believe that we have any official word on anything when it comes to coaching related here. Let's double check on any other headlines coming out right now. We've talked about Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce's homes being broken into. Well, it appears that maybe it's part of the same group as Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow's home was broken into during Monday night's game in the latest home invasion of pro athletes in the U.S., authorities said Tuesday. No one was injured in the break-in, but the home was ransacked, according to the report by the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. Deputies weren't immediately able to determine what items were stolen. A person who's employed by Burrow arrived at the Anderson Township home Monday night to find shattered bedroom window and the home in disarray. The person called their mother and then called 911, was contacted. Deputies reached out to neighbors in an attempt to piece together surveillance footage, but obviously we talked about Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, but it appears Milwaukee Bucks forward Bobby Portis had his home broken into November 2nd. Minnesota Timberwolves guard Mike Conley Jr.'s home was burglarized September 15th while he was at a Vikings game So yeah, it appears that we have another break-in in that case. So maybe they're going to be able to find more things as to what is going on and who's behind these break-ins. But that appears to be it here for us on this headline segment. Let's step aside for a break. When we come back, I'll have final word. We'll wrap things up here, then send things out to Dan Lucero live from Seaman as he's got 580 Preps Hoops coming up after this after this break. We'll have final word on 580 Sports Talk.
Unwrap huge holiday savings at Staples. And right now at Staples, save up to $350 on select computers. Ends 12/28 in-store only. Pay it forward this holiday season with WIBW. You could win $1,000 to spend on anything. Plus, we'll donate another $1,000 to the charity of your choice. Think about what an extra grand can do for you and another $1,000 for the community.
Christmas makes me feel great.
It's a holiday win-win for sure.
I love the holidays.
Sign up daily at 580WIBW.com. Maybe you'll be the winner and grab $1,000 for yourself and another $1,000 to pay it forward. Get details and get set to win now at 580WIBW.com.
These are today's top headlines.
We're finding more details about the suspected insurance CEO killer now in custody. Trump goes into defense mode with a growing number of his cabinet nominees. The Franklin fire has exploded around Malibu, California, torching thousands of acres.
Don't miss a thing. Stay connected for whatever's next.
News that affects you. On air and on demand. FM 104.9, 580 AM, WIBW.
Over the years, you've brought them into your home. You were prescribed opioids after the C-section, when Dad injured his back, when your basketball star tore his ACL. Opioids helped with the pain, and you held on to them just in case. But did you know holding on to unused opioids puts your family at risk? Opioids are powerful pain-reducing prescription medicines, but most people who are prescribed opioids don't finish their prescriptions. So millions of unused opioids are sitting in homes across the country. And tragically, more than 100 Americans die every day from overdoses involving opioids. What can you do to protect your family? Remove the risk of unused opioids from your home. Pills, patches, or syrups in drawers, purses, and cabinets, anywhere they might be hiding. To find out how to dispose of them properly, visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
WIBW, Topeka.
One more thing. In conclusion, you better wrap it up.
Final word time here on 580 Sports Talk. Youngest in command, moving with you, Spencer Dupuis here. And how about I give you my take on Dan's first topic today that he opened the show with? Why can't the Chiefs get open? Separation's how you get open. The Chiefs, they don't have really separators this year. Rashee Rice, he could do it. Well, guess what? He was hurt. Hollywood Brown knows how to do it with his speed. Well, he's hurt. Hopefully he's coming back here in a few weeks, but he won't be the guy that we know yet. He'll maybe in the playoffs, he'll be that guy. Xavier Worthy, he's fast. He can do it all right. He's a rookie, but he's just not very physical. It kind of comes down to two guys. The one guy they traded for and one guy that's been on this team forever. Guy they traded for, DeAndre Hopkins. He is just an amazing player. And, you know, what he's been able to do since he's come over here. It's kind of crazy, quite honestly. I mean, like he's at 357 yards, 4 touchdowns in the games that he's played here, 45 targets, 30 catches. I mean, that's big for a guy in DeAndre Hopkins, who obviously didn't like the situation he had in Tennessee, and don't blame him. It wasn't a great situation. And Travis Kelce, who had trouble at the beginning of the year, still is finding a way to, when it comes to, he had trouble. Wow, we talked about it at length on this show about Travis Kelce being a different guy. Well, he's still the leading receiver on this team. He needs 318 yards, and he's got a 1,000-yard season. He's got 80 catches on the season. That's double what Xavier Worthy has. Obviously, Hopkins has 30 catches, I believe, since he's been here, and that's big. But Rashee Rice had 24 through 4 games. You extrapolate that out, that's close to the number there. I mean, we're through 13 games, so that's 8, 12. That's 75. You know, that's right around that same number, actually, as it would be there. But you miss Rashee Rice, and you miss Hollywood Brown, who only played one snap for you, this team at all. Noah Gray has exceeded expectations, I would say, but maybe that's the public's expectations, because it felt like the Chiefs have the expectations of him with the way they gave him that contract extension. They had the expectation for him to be a great receiver. Juju kind of just been a filler guy since they got DeAndre Hopkins. I wonder what his workload would look like if it wasn't for DeAndre Hopkins. He's got 14 catches, 202 yards, and a score. Maybe he's got 20 catches, 300 yards. Obviously, that's 155 less than what DeAndre Hopkins has. So who really knows how things would be? But obviously, things would be a lot better, most likely, if you had Rashee Rice and you had Hollywood Brown, how you envision things. Well, that's not how things work. You envision things, they're not always the same how you envision them, how they sit on paper, which is how they will actually play out. And for the Chiefs, you've got a few weeks left. You've got an odd schedule coming up. I think you need guys to step up in this final part of the season. Obviously, I mentioned odd schedule. With the Christmas Day game, that's a midweek game. That's like some action for you, except for NFL style action, right? Like this week is the last regular, well, I guess the 5th of January will be a regular, most likely a Sunday game. Could be flexed to Sunday night football. They haven't determined the game times of the final week of the regular season yet, but could see a Sunday night football game for the Chiefs Broncos game, depending on where the Broncos are and if things like that, or are the maybe you don't flex that because the Chiefs might at that point already have the number one slot already already got together, so they won't play their starters. I don't know if that's an intriguing game. But this week, obviously, Chiefs Browns Sunday, that's their last regular Sunday game until potentially the last game. Then you go Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday. And those two games that are the Saturday and Wednesday, probably going to be your hardest games down the stretch. Obviously, the Broncos play you harder, but if they don't, I mean, the Broncos play you hard, but you're going to take on the Texans and the Steelers. Steelers have kind of been shot out of a cannon this year. Kind of, interesting the way their season has unraveled. Justin Fields started the season as the starting quarterback there, and he started but then he got benched even though the team was winning. He just wasn't playing very well. So it'll be interesting to see who can be the Chiefs guy down the stretch. But if I had to put a word on it, Travis Kelce's going to be the guy down the stretch for this Chiefs team, like he has been year in and year out. His numbers are looking like it, and that is where we're going. We'll head out to Seaman High School. Seaman taking on Lansing basketball doubleheader. That's coming up next. We'll be back from 3 until 6 for another edition of 580 Sports Talk tomorrow. Tim Fitzgerald will join us to talk all things K-State. This has been 580 Sports Talk. I'm Spencer Dupuy. You'll hear from Dan Lucero in just a wee little bit.